Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, was Bradley Beal unlocked? Was that the Bradley Beal we have all been waiting for? And more good and bad from the season opener. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I am Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Friday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season with the big return on FanDuel by placing your first $5 bet and get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the Wild West Valley. How are we feeling on this Friday, Ben Garcia?
From the depths of downtown, where I was 30 minutes ago, to the Wild West Valley, I am doing great. 1-0, excited to be facing the Lakers tonight.
Yeah, back-to-back here right off the bat, which is a little interesting, but it should be fun. We talked about the first 10 games. They're going to be a test, but let's go back to opening night a little bit here, because the guy we questioned, or at least kind of had the thought exercise, was this a weird preseason or something to be concerned about? A guy who never really felt comfortable at all last season with the Suns. The third banana in this big three, Bradley Beal, the most consistent from start to finish in that 116-113 win over the Clippers, Ben. 24 points, 8 of 12 from the field, 4 of 6 from deep, and just relentless in a lot of the ways that I think we were all scratching our heads wondering why we did not see that Beal last year. He showed up. I think it's a great sign of things to come for the rest of the season. What do you think from Beal's night looking back at it a day later here?
Bradley Beal was so good in this game. He was so good. I'm not going to rehash everything I had said yesterday, but I had mentioned that he saved this team from spiraling down the drain in that third quarter. He was a shotgunner. Yesterday was a day that Bradley Beal knew he was on, and everything just looked so smooth. And the thing that you had mentioned the most was his ability to get to the basket and relentless. And there was a play where he twisted his ankle on one point where I was like, oh my goodness, not again. And it turns out he's on the injury report, but for something totally different this time around. So Bradley Beal was so good yesterday, man. And it just goes to show you that preseason, and you and I both were prisoners of the moment, me maybe more than you, where I'm hyping up Ryan Dunn and are we sure about Bradley Beal? You know, you and I are both like, this guy's probably fine, but he was arguably their best player yesterday. Maybe not in crunch time. Kevin Durant was so good. Everything about Bradley Beal last night was he just looked comfortable. It looked like there was more space for him to be able to get to the basket. It looked like he's going to thrive much better in this offense. What say you?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that I have thoughts on him on both ends of the court here. So offensively, you're absolutely right. I think that his ability to get to the rim immediately and throughout the game was great. He took 5 shots of his 12 were in the paint. He was 4 of 5. And 4 of those were right at the rim. That's great. I mean, you probably want that even higher, to be honest, but you got to also remember he's gunning threes at the same time. So, honestly, what I probably should have pointed out is 1 mid-range shot. Only 1 mid-range. Yeah, but 5 in the paint, 6 from deep. That leaves only 1 from mid-range. And frankly, we know the mid-range, gods and all that stuff that this team can be. For Beal, that's where I want the shot diet. And what I loved in terms of how they got that job done, Ben, is they have developed these go-to dribble handoff kind of pitch plays with him that he has chemistry with all the centers on already. Plumlee, Nurkic, Oso. It doesn't matter who's in there. You see them do it on out of bounds plays. You see them do it on just sort of half court sets, and it's nothing messy or complicated. It's exactly how you should be using Beal. Get him on the move, going downhill, where he doesn't have to break down the defense off the dribble. And look how easy it is if you even give him a little bit of space and momentum to do that. And what's crazy is that's exactly what the Wizards were doing his last year there. Some of his best moments were with Kristaps Porzingis in that little two-man give-and-go game, if you go back and watch a lot of how he got the job done scoring the ball that season. So it's not just that he's had a big night. It is very clear that Mike Budenholzer came in with a plan for how to deploy Beal, and he's already reaping the benefits of it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because it felt like, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because Devin Booker was efficient, just didn't have the volume of shots. It was really interesting to me, and you had mentioned with the dribble handoffs that Budenholzer seemed like he solved the Bradley Beal issue in 1 second and had more trouble getting Devin Booker shots up, and that's something that they'll work on. But the biggest thing that you would mention as well, and you're right, we saw this with Kristaps Porzingis when he was with the Wizards. Bradley Beal's secret sauce always has been he is really lightning quick, and that first step is a first step that not a lot of NBA players have. He's able to beat guys immediately off the dribble and get to the lane. And it's not just an ability to get to the lane, but it's playmaking as well. And that's what this team needs. I seriously, unless it's wide open, unless it's a gimme, I don't want Bradley Beal shooting any mid-range shots. One last night was too many, even though I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if it was wide open. Getting to the basket was what this team needed. We had mentioned this last year. There's one other guy that I think is going to consistently try to get to the basket and get those cheap buckets outside of Kevin Durant, and that was Tyus Jones, and we saw that last night with his patented floater or just quickly getting to the rim. But Bradley Beal's going to be the guy
Everything
that
becomes
gets
a
there.
floater with Tyus because he's so short.
Yeah.
He kind of has to chuck it up there. It's like me out there.
Well, that's what I just kind of saw from Beal was the ability to those dribble handoffs at the top of the key, and his ability that when the defender is trying to come around the screener on that, the screener more like the giver, Beal's able to beat him right off of it. And I wonder how much other people are going to struggle with that.
Of direction,
yeah.
Right? Like he's shifty.
Loose, man.
He kind of can turn it like it's really like, almost the original kind of like basketball meaning of like what a two-man game should be, where it's not just that basic pick and roll that we see so much, but it's like the shiftiness, the cutting, the unpredictability. Is he going to go for the three? Is he going to suddenly be at the basket? Is he going to take the ball now, or is he going to reuse the screen? He's unpredictable, and using him in those environments is maximizing him, in my opinion, especially at the age he's at, where maybe he's not going to be the guy who put up 30 a game in a season 5 years ago, but you want him to be doing a little less. Maybe he can break down the dribble, break it down a defender off the dribble like you mentioned, Ben, but if he doesn't have to, even better. And getting him in space the way that they have has been awesome. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick, defensively.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is where I'm at right now. And I mean it more as a credit to Beal than a knock on the other guy that I'm about to list here. I trust Bradley Beal on defense right now more than Devin Booker, and I think Mike Budenholzer should too. I'm not, it's one game. I told you before, I learned my lesson panicking on Kevin Durant after one game last season. He had a bad opener and people crushed me, and then the next game he was awesome and I felt like an idiot. So I'm not going to do any of that in any real direction right now. But I will talk up Beal, and I think he should have been on Harden more to close this game. I think that his defense on the ball and his awareness off the ball, he is, in this starting lineup, the second best perimeter defender, the best guard defender on this team. And I want to see him continue to be used like it. I think Frank Vogel was onto something. I think Beal, as the guy defending the best opposing player, we should get used to it.
Bradley Beal is really lengthy, and his ability to steal the ball and just rip through defenders is really underrated. That being said, no, I would disagree with you. I really liked the adjustment of putting, and I don't even know if it was adjustment. To me, it just looked like Kevin Durant shooing over everyone else and was guarding James Harden. And at times, Tyus Jones would guard James Harden too. But in that moment, the best defender on this team, not named Ryan Dunn, is Kevin Durant. I kind of push Ryan Dunn to the side until we know for a fact he's a top.
I thought KD had a great game on defense.
KD was so good. Now, here's the caveat to that. When you say Bradley Beal or Kevin Durant cannot do that every night. And I do not want him doing it every night. And it's going to have to be this split squad thing where some guys just take turns on Harden or whoever it is that night. Because Bradley Beal, the wear and tear on his body, I don't want it either. But you're right. Ever since last year, I think it was the Sacramento Kings game where they came back and won it on the road. Bradley Beal has really stepped up his defensive ability. And although I still think as a pure defender, I probably like Devin Booker better than Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has more tools than Devin Booker does to be a better defender. He's got those really lengthy arms. He's really good shifting.
Yeah.
But he's still kind of a smaller guy that people can take to the basket. So I didn't hate at all the adjustment of KD or Tyus on James Harden.
Yeah, they were good at mixing it up quite a bit. I think Tyus was more Harden getting him on an island and trying to attack him as a mismatch, and Tyus just held up and made it not a mismatch.
Tyus
but as
did
far
really
as the version of defender that we saw Book be in the Olympics, I didn't see that yesterday. I think he has a tendency to over-communicate and lose track of what he's supposed to be doing. He wants to be the general, and he forgets that, like, hey, you got a gun also. Go ahead and shoot the opposing. You know what I mean? Like, you're the soldier and the general. You got to do both. But, either way. I mean, I think that it's clear Beal will have that role.
Yeah, you had just mentioned, I'll be 15 seconds on this, but Booker committed some pretty stupid fouls yesterday. That last one on Zubac, it was clearly a foul, and it was just stupid. Like, you didn't need to assert your dominance that much, especially you got to play smarter, man. You got 5 fouls. You got to understand they're itching to get you out of the game, but that's another thing.
Probably affected his rhythm for sure. So, it's more of a praise of Beal, less of a knock on anybody else.
1,000%.
But he's established himself as most nights, for instance, I would guess he'll be guarding Austin Reeves against the Lakers, right? He'll be getting those matchups. All right,
that's
next
a good matchup.
Big takeaway one day later from this game that I'm less certain about. I'm going to probably need Ben to explain it to me. What the hell was going on with the Suns point guards? Why were they not being used like point guards? We'll get there next. First, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy game out there. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy accessible to all and better than it is anywhere else. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks. All you got to do is find a sport you love, a player you believe in, or maybe you don't believe in, find their stats and pick more or less. You can pick across sports to set your lineup. You can also go ahead and just hammer something that you're sure of. Set all one team and say more on passing yards, more on rushing yards, more on wide receivers. You avoid the pools and the leagues and the redrafts, and it's just you versus those Prize Picks player projections. So download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup, no matter what. Prize Picks. Run your game. Coming back here, don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter. Catch up on everything going on in Suns land as well as the rest of the NBA in your inbox on a daily basis. Ben, you know what I heard about the newsletters?
They're amazing.
The Kings fans are beating everybody out. Apparently, our wonderful Locked On Kings host, Matt George, who does a great job, put his listeners to the test to say beat the Lakers. And the Kings have tripled everybody up here with their Sacramento fans signing up for this newsletter. So I feel like if we know anything about the Valley of the Sun, we know that the fans here are better than the fair weather LA folk or Sacramento who's never won anything, right? Okay, fair weather Lakers fans maybe not fully accurate, but a lot of them
No. Fair weather bandwagon Lakers fans.
Yeah.
We discredit Lakers fans on the show. We absolutely do.
Yeah. So
At least I do.
I think that our listeners can go subscribe, click the link at the show description below, or go to lockedondaily.com, sign up for our newsletter. I'm going to do a preview of the Lakers game that you'll get on Friday heading into it, and catch up with the show and all the news going on and great writing from across the network, and also beat all the Lakers and Kings fans who are getting cocky.
Is that a solo writing Lakers Suns preview?
Yeah, I'm just going to take some of the stuff we talk about on the show today and turn it into a little article.
There you go. Hey, everyone.
Content, baby.
Solo shows. Brendon Kleen, man. Solo writing.
There you go. All righty. Let's go to the point guard position here. So you talked about Tyus Jones. He did a great job when he finally came in and closed the game, having the ball in his hands and executing and orchestrating this offense, Ben. I think we're on the same page there. We didn't talk about this yesterday, but of course, true to form, Tyus Jones, 8 assists, 0 turnovers in his debut. Wouldn't have expected anything less. The minute he turns the ball over, I feel like we got to talk about cutting him. I mean, that's the standard that he's basically setting here is a single turnover.
Him and Monte Morris, man. Him and Monte Morris absolutely held true. I don't even know how you do that, because how do you not turn over the ball at all? Like, sometimes you just catch the ball out of bounds because someone throws you something stupid. Like, that's not just good passing. That's being in the right place at the right time. It is so hard. That was like Chris Paul in the playoffs, who had like a 11 assist to 1 turnover ratio. So Tyus was really good.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw how many times that happened to basically every other player on this team yesterday. 22 total turnovers. Somehow Tyus had 0 despite having the ball in his hands all the time. I don't get it.
Did it feel like at all, just with the 22 turnovers, did it feel like the Clippers had 22? Because I went and checked the box score after, and they had the same amount of turnovers. It felt like the Clippers had like 10. Anyways,
I agree.
Maybe I was just annoyed.
So 35 minutes for Tyus. That obviously includes some overtime, but +6, and Monte Morris +2. Here's the thing, the predicament that I'm kind of in with this, Ben, is I have made the case for this, and I still believe it. When I look around the NBA and what wins, at the very least, the Suns need to have an option that is made up mostly of long, rangy, versatile wings and forwards to compete with, whether you're looking at Boston or the Wolves or the Thunder, or whatever you think the best team is. You got to have that option. So I'm not going to sit here and say, play Tyus a million more minutes. He already played 35. If it was a regulation game, it'd be 30. That's kind of the window we expected. Monte Morris, he's going to do his thing. I thought he played decently well. He had a good preseason. Because I know they need that other gear. But the part that I don't get is why, even when those point guards were on the floor, why are they spacing the floor? Why is, Kevin Durant bringing the ball up constantly at times, or like you mentioned, Mason Plumlee doing it a couple times? Can we just chalk this up to the Clippers and the Suns just kind of being caught off guard here, or is this something that worries you long term, that they're not going to be putting these guys to the best use they can?
So this is the problem with doing a post-game show 15 minutes after the game, because I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Yeah. And in that game, you and I went. Well, you and I went from.
It is. You gotta have it in your head, and it's like I don't know.
Go back and I was lifting today, and I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, what I said last night was kind of stupid. Like, when I just think about it, when I have a little bit of time to marinate on it, and whatever, I'll wear that. But 14 points up at halftime, right? Now I'm doing the show. I literally told my wife, I was like, oh, sick. Maybe the Suns are going to blow these guys out. They're up 25, and Brendon and I can start 20 minutes earlier, and I can get to bed on time. And then that completely changed. Then I had to go into, okay, the Suns team is melting down. And then the fourth quarter started, and I was like, okay, are they going to do well in the fourth quarter? Like, there was changing narratives. And so you had mentioned, just getting to your point, I think the Suns just kind of panicked and got into old habits, especially in that third quarter. Because I'll still stand on, it wasn't a great defensive game. Again, I'm just going to lean on the fact that the Clippers don't have great shot makers.
Yeah.
Last night, I chop it up to, there's still some good players on that Clippers team. Derrick Jones Jr. is a really good defender. Zubac is a pretty good defender. They've got Terrence Mann is a good defender. And they're really well coached. And if there's any team well equipped enough to play without their star player. It's the team that started or ended doing it last year and is doing it this year. Just really well coached, got a lot of good defenders, division team. You see them a ton. I'm willing to chalk it up to the Suns just got thrown into a dryer and was just going up and down and up and down and up and down. And they just went back into old habits. And that's where you clearly saw it in the third quarter. It was, and you had mentioned it was a really good point that you had mentioned yesterday, the wannabe hero ball where it was, they were just taking bad shots. The other guys were pulling it up the court. And I think that's where this comes into coaching, where Budenholzer called a timeout, brought him in, reeled them all back in, and then the Suns went on a run. They went small ball, which we'll get to in a second here. And I think that the Suns are still trying to shake old habits. And I have fallen victim to it already where I said, patience, patience, patience. I didn't even give them enough patience. It took 4.5 quarters, but they did it. And that's all I needed to see. It's not that the light bulb ever comes on or when it comes on. It's just that it came on. And in the fourth quarter, it came on. I'm willing to chop that game up to Clippers are still a pretty good team. They're a very feisty team. Very well coached.
I think they're going to be they're going to be a great defensive team this year. If
so
they can,
good.
I mean, and they don't even have Kawhi Leonard, who, we'll see what he even looks like, all these
even
years.
James Harden was getting into passing lanes.
Harden has a very specific set of things that he does well on defense, and he's learned how to only do them and do it where it impacts the game. So, yeah, I agree. I think Ty Lue just kind of feels confident, drawing stuff up against the Suns team. I think that's also the reality of it. I think that Ty Lue feels like I wouldn't say he has this team's number. The Suns continue to beat the Clippers. It's not as if they're getting, demolished by them every time that they play the Clippers, but I think he has a good sense of how to get this team out of rhythm, how to get Booker out of rhythm, Durant, and you just saw it. And I think that immediately it was clear the Clippers were going to be sending two to the ball and pick and rolls. So the Suns responded well. Mason Plumlee made some nice plays, and we talked about some of how they were using Beal to counter that and everything else. But I get the idea of panicking a little bit and saying, well, if that's going to be the coverage, we're not going to put the ball in our 6-foot point guard's hands and have him trying to throw passes over the top of, Zubats and Derek Jones Jr. swallowing him up. So I can see the players on the court saying, well, damn, like that's pretty swarming and intense. Like the Clippers make you play their game. The way that they're going to play defense is it makes you kind of slow down and second guess and play the mismatch game and everything else. And we know, like you said, that brings the worst out of the Suns. There's a reason they struggled with this team last year. So the more I sat with it as well, I'm not going to, overlook the fact that during the preseason they looked very comfortable. I trust Tyus Jones. He still had a good game and reminded everybody why late down the stretch he's going to be a difference maker. And I think probably, reminded his teammates and his coaching staff that I got this, right? So I think the way it all ended is probably a good sign. And I think they're going to hit the ground running when they play the Lakers on Friday. I think that they're going to put together a better offensive game than we saw in this one. They had a 104.5 offensive rating. Absolutely ugly. That is not good. It's the low possession game, all that stuff. It was, fouls galore and everything, but that's not good. So I think it gets much more into the 115 range or whatever, 120 range that we've expected from this team on Friday, on Saturday, on Monday. And just, I think it was more about the Clippers. At least I got to hope that.
Yeah, no, I don't think you have to hope it. I do think it was about the Clippers, but just really quickly, while we're Monday morning quarterbacking this, as well as the Lakers on Friday, the Suns can't play the way they did on Wednesday that they are going to play today. Like they can't do that. They cannot get into a slugfest with this team. They can't get into a free throw shootout with this team. And just really quickly, just for all Suns fans as well, last year, and the betting markets shaped this out, is oftentimes teams would be without their best player, and the other team the team that was out without their best player would oftentimes backdoor cover a lot in the betting markets. And so what people realized, the trend was when teams know their best player's out, that elevates one or two guys that have to come into this game. And those guys know.
If there's any team that's used to their best player being out,
it's the Clippers, man.
It's the Clippers.
They know that. Teams were getting hype. And also, brand new stadium. They're hyped about it. Sure. Home opener. And when they got on a run, they just played with that much more intensity. So
and this team
I'm willing to chalk it up to that.
their pivot when they got rid of Paul George was to say, we'll just sign a bunch of very good defenders for average contracts, and
Derek Jones Jr.
they're
was
not
a
going to
steal,
be
man.
they're not going to be an awesome team with that. I agree, Derek Jones is a steal, but they're definitely going to be feisty on defense. That's a no-brainer. All right, last but not least, the Suns closed regulation with small ball. We saw them go to it quite a bit. Does that mean it's here to stay? Or was it just one of the million lineups we saw them try in the opener? First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL and NBA fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get that hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. When you do, you will get started with $200 in bonus bets. Charles Barkley voice, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All right, we got a Cardinals-Dolphins game, the return of Tua Tagovailoa. We'll see how that all goes, but in the meantime, the Cardinals are underdogs on the road. I feel like it's going to be a messy game. I can see it being close. Maybe it feels a little better if you go ahead and put $5 on the Redbirds in Miami. Either way, you're getting those $200 in bonus bets to get to work betting the Sun season, the rest of the NFL season, and much more, all at FanDuel.com. All right, Ben, let's close out the show here. So I want to get this stat right. I sent it to you on Twitter. It is via the wonderful Kellen Olson over at Arizona Sports.
11 rotations.
No.
I already know what you're going to say.
11 guys played, but no. The number of different lineups, the first part of the stat that Kellen put in there was 29. 29 different five-man units played together in the opener for the Suns. 29. And it felt like that, right? It felt like that. And we saw, Oso at the 4, Oso at the 5. We saw no point guard. We saw plenty of minutes with a point guard. We saw this guy handling the ball from the big 3 and that guy, and Book's in foul trouble and Nurk's in foul trouble. And it felt like preseason a little bit for Bud still, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in I think he's still getting a feel for this team type of way. Were you surprised that he was running and gunning so much with these lineups, Ben?
I wasn't surprised that he was running and gunning. You had texted me. You just sent me that stat, and I love it for now, and you said I don't love it. And yeah. It was even funny. You said, I don't know if they keep winning, sure, but it's messy. And I said, some might say it's random. So Bud staying close to the culture, playing random. I told you, and I texted you this as well. I'll give it 10 games. Give him 10 games to figure out who works where. And, the biggest thing and the one that worked the most, and I was kind of surprised by, Budenholzer going small with that small ball 5 lineup with Royce O'Neal, which I think Ryan Dunn could fall into that at some point, but kind of giving the Clippers a taste of their own medicine. When Zubac fouled out, I got a little worried because they brought in Nick Batum, who was going to play that small ball 5, who was a killer small ball 5 for the Clippers over the past few years. Budenholzer was well adjusted for it, and he brought in his 5 guys with Royce O'Neal at the 5. I got to give credit where it's due. I don't know if those guys just have a lot of chemistry, but everyone moved in lockstep, and it just worked out really well. I am surprised that there were 11 rotations. Or I'm sorry, 29 rotations, 11 men played.
Yeah.
But not so much. What about you?
I think that there's a few things that Bud is trying to figure out, right? So at the end of the first quarter, it was just Booker in the stagger. We saw a Beal-only lineup in that third quarter that you mentioned in the first segment. That Beal-only lineup did some damage. What are the lineups that make the most sense when not all of the big 3 are on the court, right? Does Beal need a point guard? Does Booker need a point guard? How much shooting do they need to space the floor around those guys versus how can they maybe steal some minutes for a Plumlee? So I think that that's part of what they're determining right now. How can the rookies play? What's the best situation for the rookies, right? At what position, with what other guys, what defensive role, what offensive role? That's another question. And then the last one is, I think it's clear. It took Frank Vogel being down bad against the Kings a couple times in game 4 against Minnesota, right? Where they basically just said, whatever, we're going to lose the series anyway. Let's play small. Eubanks is out of the rotation. It was beyond break glass in case of emergency. It was like I'm like throwing a fit almost. Like this is like me stomping away to my room. Fine, I'll play small ball, It's here to stay for Bud. But the question is, what is the go-to small ball unit? Who's on the court for it? Frankly, you mentioned the one that they did last night that worked. I agree, obviously worked. I don't think most of the time that's going to have Tyus Jones on the court. I think that you're playing with fire a little bit too much if you're already small and you have your tiny point guard out there. I'll just put this out there right now because it's more Monday morning quarterbacking, and it's that throw caution to the wind. I think the best lineup I can imagine for the Suns right now in that mold is the big three, Allen and Dunn. I want to see that lineup. That's my guess. Maybe it's O'Neal for now until Ryan Dunn gets acquainted with the NBA. But that I want to see. I think Bud's still looking for it and just trying to put all of his guys on the court who have earned minutes, which I guess is part of the deal here too. You're gonna have to make somebody unhappy before long.
Yeah, because I am obsessed with lengthy 3-and-D guys, and Royce O'Neal's more of that than Grayson Allen. I'd pull out Grayson Allen. I'd put Royce O'Neal in that just because I'm not really looking for more shooting. I've got Bradley Beal. I've got Kevin Durant. I've got Devin Booker, and you can't leave Royce O'Neal wide open. Other than that, I agree. But it looks like Budenholzer's going to slow roll Ryan Dunn maybe more than we first thought with him. But I would agree with you. That lineup, I want to see that. You're not going to see that on Friday. There's no chance you're playing any small ball 5 with AD on the court. Zero chance. You will get ran out of the building. He is a rim runner, best defensive player in the league, in my opinion. Maybe him and Wembanyama, but I'd probably still go Anthony Davis. And he will punish you down low. And we saw that for years with Anthony Davis. Mason Plumlee and Yusuf Nurkic are going to have their work cut out for them. And honestly, you might see some Bol on Friday. I don't know how, but you might see some of that on Friday. I wouldn't expect to see this lineup again until Saturday against the Mavericks. And I hope we do. I hope we do see that because I want to see it ready for the playoffs in case you match up with the Wolves again. Because the only way to run Rudy Gobert off the bleeping court is to go small, but do it in a correct way. Now I'm thinking in a, 5-dimensional here, but I need to see
part of what this will all be about, and I think part of what Bud's trying to figure out here. I agree. I think one of the issues that the Suns run into when they do play small is a guy like AD is kind of the worst case scenario for them because you really just don't want KD to have to be guarding him, right? And that's kind of what you run into. So I think we might see some small ball, but definitely not, closing the game like we did.
Well, sure. Sure. We'll see some small ball when the not benches are emptied, but for lack of a better term, when the benches are empty, when it doesn't really matter. This is obvious, but Embiid, Jokic, Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, closing lineups, you're not going to be able to go small. You're not going to be able to. Especially if you have Tyus Jones out there, you're going to be way too small, and guys are going to bully you. And last night, the Clippers tried to hunt down Tyus Jones, and credit to Tyus Jones, it didn't work. He was mostly pretty good, especially when he got away with somehow poking the ball out of Harden's hand, and then they called it out on Harden. But for the most part, I like what Tyus Jones did, but you can't do that.
Yeah, but you're right. I think watch when somebody better than Harden tries to do that, or a little bit more of a downhill scoring threat than Harden, who's not just trying to draw BS fouls and actually picks on
you mean Luka?
Opposing players, whether Luka, LeBron, even whatever.
Embiid.
So
yeah.
Well, I agree. You're running the risk of getting too tiny. So that's all the mix that the Suns are looking for. I think we will continue to see pretty aggressive rotations from Bud. And maybe 10 games, like you said, and we kind of see where things look. But you can't do this all season. I get it for now. We'll see where it goes.
Well, time out before you end the show. Because we got a game tonight. You think they win?
Yeah, I don't think the Lakers are as scary as some Suns fans do. I think the Suns have beat the
Okay.
Lakers pretty regularly in this era.
Ooh.
Close
Okay.
games, almost always, but they beat them last year early in the season during the NBA Cup. They beat them later in the year, I believe, at least once. I think they'll do it.
All right. You've got a better feeling than I do. I think the Suns lose to the Lakers tonight. That's not because I'm against the Suns. I just think that they're still experimenting, and that cohesion with the Lakers, I just think that that's going to work out well, especially at home. But I hope not. I would love to. Oh, I would love to make fun of Lakers fans tomorrow.
New coach over there too, right? And they have
New
like
coach.
no depth, so
That's a good point. Well,
could
he's
be a
played
bench
one.
game where
He's
the
played
Suns
one
bench
game and he
steps
beat
up.
Chris Finch, so he's Steve Kerr basically now. So, and he's got a
Yeah.
cool podcast. All right, I'm sorry. You
Had.
can end the show.
Yeah. Now
Oh,
it's
that's
Tyrese
right.
Halliburton interviewing Obama. That's the podcast now. All right. That will wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. Enjoy tonight's Suns-Lakers clash. Suns-Mavs home opener Saturday. And we will be back before you know it.